Okay, this one is an image that I took up in the Kimberley recently, and it's obviously of a Boab tree, and I want to show you the before and after and how I got to this final result. This is the end. This is what we started with. So obviously you can see we put a new sky in, and we've changed the color, and we've stylized the light so the light looks like it's coming in from the left, and yeah, it looks quite nice. So it just goes to show you don't have to actually have perfect light every time. You can just fudge it in Photoshop, and everybody thinks that you were lucky on the day. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to get rid of this, close this down, and I'm going to open up the original files so that you can we can work along from scratch. So get the two files. One of them is going to be a sky there, and the other one is going to be the tree. Okay, here we are. I hit F on the keyboard just to give myself a bit of space. If I hold down the space bar, I can actually move the image around. First thing we need to do is actually create a mask for this sky area, or for the foreground, or a selection at least. We're going to use channels to do that. You can see here we've got all the different channels. The blue is the most contrasty, so we're going to grab hold of that bar there, and we're going to drag it down to this icon at the bottom here. Now we've got a copy. We're going to hit the Command L keys on the keyboard, and that'll bring up our levels dialog box. I'm always worried about shortcuts. I don't care about going up to the menu bar up there. It's all about making shortcuts. Okay, so we're going to drag the black point down till this gets dark. Now we don't go too far so that it really starts to block up all the detail, but we can't go too light either, because then things are a bit too mid-tone. So I'm bringing it about there. The white point's the same. If you go too far with the white point, you see all the trees, all the branches and the trees disappearing. So you just want it to sort of get to a point where it's gotten lighter, but it's not taking away too much stuff. Once you're happy with that, you click OK. Then we go to our dodge and burn tools. If you hit 0, I always say 0, but it's actually O. If you hit O on the keyboard, you'll bring up your either a dodge burn or your desaturate tool. So at the moment here, we've got the burn tool, which is exactly what we want. It's shaped like a hand. We have to set the range to shadows, which is really important, and the exposure to 100%. And when it's like that, I'll just rub over all that foreground, and you can see all those white spots disappearing, also that hill, and I'll just go give it a blast over that tree as well. Just along the edge like that. Now the beauty of this is it doesn't really affect the whites a great deal. You can see it affected the whites a little bit over on the right hand side here, but we'll fix that up. So if you hit Shift O twice, you go from the burn tool to the dodge tool. Now the important thing with the dodge tool is you set the range to highlights, the exposure to 100, and then we just go rub over the white. Now it's important to rub over all that white completely, even if it looks white to you already. Chances are it might be, so give it a good rubbing over like that, just once. And there you have your beautiful mask, and from that we'll create, it's a channel actually, it's a blue copy channel. If we go down to this little icon here and click on that, that gives us our marching ants, and that's selecting all the white areas. So this is what we want to do. The next thing is you need to go back and click on the bar at RGB there, just to bring all the color back, and go to your layers palette. What I've shown you guys to do in the past, it's going to change a little. I might make a variation towards the end of this video, but we're going to cut this foreground out, and then we're going to put a new sky behind it. But the selection is for the sky, it's not for the foreground, so we need to inverse this selection. You can actually go up here to select and then select inverse, or you can do the shortcut, which is Command Shift I, and that inverts that selection. Now we're going to cut that out. So to cut that out and put it up on its own layer, we need to sort of duplicate it. The shortcut for that is Command J. So what's happened now is that anything that is within that selection will be copied and put up on its own layer. And that's what we've got there. Now we're going to duplicate it again, Command J. We have two copies. We go back down to the copy underneath, layer 1, and we change the blend mode to multiply. And all that's doing is fixing up the edges of our selection. You can see the tree as I turn this on and off. So the edges sort of come back a little bit. So it's definitely worth doing that little step. We select the background layer. At this point we hit F on the keyboard twice just to change our view, and we're going to grab that sky. Now as you can see, if I go to grab this sky, I've got my brush tool selected, the dodge tool selected, so I had to hit V on the keyboard to bring the move tool back so I can move one layer onto another. Drag and drop onto that Boab tree shot and put it into the top there, line it up. hit F on the keyboard again to get our full screen. And now I need to transform this guy to fit in this image, so I'm going to have to drag it down. So because it's selected, you can see here layer 2, which is the sky, is selected, and then as you can see, the order is perfect. We've got the background, then the sky, and then the 2 cut out layers on top of that. We're going to go Command T on the keyboard. Now obviously if you're on a PC, it's Control T. So if anytime you hear me say Command something or other, if you're on a PC, it's Control. I'll try and put the PC shortcuts in as well. Okay, we drag that middle point down, and just so that the horizon sort of disappears behind that point there, and then hit return. If we go in and zoom in and have a look at our edge, we can see our edge is not too bad, but it's a little bit dodgy. By having this multiply layer on there, it does fix the edge a bit. The other thing we can do is we can duplicate that sky, Command J or Control J if you're on a PC, and then change the blend mode of that to screen. Now what that is doing, as you can see, it's really making the sky quite light, which is okay. We're going to sort of fix this up a little bit. Zoom back in, which is Command or Control plus, looking at the sky area there, and I'm going to drop the opacity of this layer back to 0. Then I'm just going to slowly build it up to a point where the edge looks half decent. It looks like we can get away with it, which is probably around there somewhere, 36%. And you can see now that we've got a bit of that detail back, and the edge looks quite good. So it's a good way of doing this. Is a good way of fixing up those edges that can be a little bit dodgy. If you've got anything that really is a problem later on, you can go back with a clone stamp tool and fix it up. So now we've got the sky in place, which is great. That's what we want. I want to sort of add a bit of grittiness to the sky now. I wanted to make it a little bit darker and a little bit more interesting, and also with the foreground I wanted to darken that off a little bit because we want to add light in other places. So let's start by stamping visible, which will give us a flattened copy on top. From that flattened copy, then we can use the apply image command and make this look the way we want. So the shortcut for stamp visible is Command Option Shift E if you're on a Mac, or Control Alt Shift E if you're on a PC. There it is there. We're now going to stamp visible on this. So we go up to image. Sorry, we've already stamped visible. It's been a long day. We're going to go to apply image. Click on apply image. Change the channel from RGB to red. And you can see it's given us quite a grungy sort of look there. The sky is desaturated and it looks quite nice. We'll click OK. But now you're going, well, come on, Fletch, that's great, but how about the foreground? It's gone quite dark. Well, we've created a beautiful alpha channel earlier, the blue copy that we've done, and that allows us to make a selection, and that selection is saved on our computer, and we can go back to it anytime. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a layer mask on there. So there's a little icon at the bottom. Click on that. We're going to go up to select, load selection, and we're going to click on channel and find the blue copy, which is the one that we've made. At this point, if we click OK, it'll give us the marching ants around the sky, but we want to actually have the marching ants inverted around the foreground. So we click OK, and you'll see them appear around the foreground there. Because we've got this good selection, I can go in now with a brush, B for brush, and I can actually, and a low opacity brush, 30%, and I'm just going to slowly go over these areas and just bring them back, the detail on the trees there, and just slightly along here, so on and so forth. And I'm bringing back the light. I'm keeping the foreground a little bit dark. As you can see there now, if I hold down the Alt key and click on the mask, you can see what we've brushed in. Go to deselect the marching ants, which is Command or Control D. Control if you're on a PC. And as we zoom in, you will see there that we've actually created some horrible halos around the sky. So not the best masking job I've ever done. So what we can do is we can go back a step, Command Z, bring those marching ants back, and what we can do is go hit X on the keyboard and just darken off along that edge there a little bit, and that will help fix it up. If we zoom in, we can sort of see a little bit better. In fact, we could actually deselect and run over this with a brush anyway, fix some of that up. The other option that we have is we can actually also go in and just lower the opacity of that effect. I didn't want to have to do that too much. Okay, that doesn't look too bad, but we can just gonna make sure that when you darken these things, it looks a little bit more even than what I've done. Dodgy Brothers Incorporated. Okay, and we can drop the opacity as well of that layer if we want. That's it completely off, and we can just build it up a little bit just so we've got a bit more detail in that sky there. Okay, the next thing we might do is we'll look at the colour. Now I'm looking at the colour of this, and I don't really like the greens and the kind of the pinky, reddy orange colour and the yellows. They don't work really well together. So I want to just change the colour of that foreground, not the sky. So let's go in and do a hue saturation adjustment layer. Click the colorize button. Bring the hue down to about between 30 and 40, and then change the blend mode of that layer from normal down to hue. The trick of this is to bring the opacity back to 0. Looking at your foreground here, we're going to build this strength up until we get to a point where we're happy, and I'm happy around there somewhere. So if I click the eye on off, you can see we've taken away that pinkiness in the sky, in the foreground. But obviously with the sky, we've created problems in the sky. But again, we have our lovely selection to come to the rescue. Select, load selection. This time we're not going to invert it because we want to select the sky. So we click OK. Now you see the marching ants around the sky. All we need to do is brush within that. So B for brush, X on the keyboard to change our foreground colour to black over here because it was on white. Make my brush quite big. Set my opacity to 100%, which is 0 on the keyboard. And I'm just going to brush the colour of that sky back, and I can just go over that because it's all selected. It doesn't matter if I go over anything that's outside that selection won't be affected at all. So now we've got that colour back. Go Command or Control D to deselect, and you see now all we've done is affected the colour in the foreground of the image, but not the sky. Now we're going to add some light and some detail into this image. So we're going to create a dodge burn layer, which is a great way of doing things. So I'm going to go down to this bottom icon here. It's the second from the right. I'm going to hold down the Option or the Alt key if you're on a PC, and click. Comes up the dialog box, New Layer. So we're going to create a new layer, but it's going to be in a blend mode of overlay. And here this box come up and it'll say fill with overlay neutral color 50% grey. We're going to tick that and click OK. So now we have a grey layer. If I go B for brush, make my brush smaller, and I paint with white with about a 10% opacity, I can now lighten areas. Now I want to lighten this tree and some of the branches, and I want to lighten through the foreground, but I'm a bit worried about touching the sky. If I go over there now, you can see if I go over this guy, it'll get lighter. But I just want the tree and the branches and some of the foreground to get lighter. So let's protect ourselves. We can select the image again, or the mask. Again, go to load selection, click the blue copy, and click invert, and that will give us the marching ants. Now you can set up Photoshop to use a command of Command H or Control H, and that will hide the marching ants. They'll still be there, but they'll disappear. The beauty of that is that you're saved. The area that you want to work on is saved. You won't go outside those lines, but the lines aren't visible anymore. So if I go Command H, they'll disappear, but they are still active. See, I can brush over the sky now and nothing happens because it's protected by that selection. So let's go in, let's zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to work on this tree to add a bit of light down the side here. Now obviously if I get close to this area, it will go over that, but over the sky it won't affect it. So I'm going to just try and work on the areas that are already got light on them, and that keeps it relevant. So the light's coming through, the light was coming from that direction, but we're just going to enhance that. We're just going to brush through some more light here. Just follow what's already there. Okay, and then we're going to brush up through these and just add a little bit more feature on them. And sort of make them a little bit rounder, and they'll stick out a little bit more, and the image will look better for it. And we can try and get a bit of light down in here, but that's obviously in the shade from the sun, so that's okay. So yeah, we just work on what's there, and If I turn this on and off now, the eye, you can see we've actually added some nice light through there. Great way to make it look like the light's actually hitting it. Now if I zoom out and get a bigger brush, I'm also wanting to add some light through the foreground here. So if I click once, hold down the shift key and click a second time, and draw a straight line. So drill down here, make the line go through there, and then just going across. So I'm adding some pretty cool light through there. And I can just sort of brush it a little bit more that way. Okay, so we turn that on and off, you can see what's going on now. If I hold down the option key and click on that eye, everything else turns off and you can see where we've brushed. Now I want to add a bit of a shadow to this side, so if I go X on the keyboard, change my foreground color to black, painting with 10% opacity, using the brush, I'll make this brush a little bit smaller, and I'll just start brushing what will look to be a shadow on the ground where that tree is. And you sort of feather it out a little bit, like so. And if you want to, you can darken that side a little bit. So now we can see we've got a shadow in there. It's starting to look like the light's really hitting it quite well from the left-hand side. Now I might want to lighten it up a little bit more. Let's get this out of the way. Go back a little bit. Now, if you want to make your image bigger or smaller, Command plus or minus will make it bigger or smaller. I like to have it small so I can actually see what I'm working on. And I might go do a levels adjustment layer now. Look what we can do with the levels. Let's bring them up. All of a sudden that's looking a lot better. But I might want even more light through there. So let's go and do another levels adjustment layer. This time we can just change the blend mode. We don't have to do anything to the adjustment layer at all. Just change the blend mode to screen. Now that lightens everything up quite a lot. But I'm going to invert that mask, the effect will be there, but will be hidden behind that mask. So if you invert it, it'll go black. There you go, the mask goes black. So the shortcut is Command I or Control I. Go B for brush, painting with white as our foreground color. X on the keyboard changes that foreground color to white there. Make a bigger brush. I'm going to click once here, and then click and hold and drag across. So now I'm just adding more light through that image. And I'm keeping my foreground a little bit dark. And now it really looks like we've got the light shining through. Turn it on and off. Yeah, and that's pretty much how I would do that. That image is just about ready to go. I mean, I could put a slight vignette on there. Let's try that. We can go to a curves adjustment layer up here. And I can then pull this point down in the middle, darken it off. And this point out here controls saturation. If you go down, it gets very dull. If you go up, get to the top, it gets too saturated. You just want to just kick it up a little bit. So we want it darker, but we don't want it more saturated. I will then invert that layer. Command I or Control I. B for brush, painting with white as my foreground color with a 30% opacity. Make a big square brush. And I'm just going to start brushing around the outside. I tend to make my vignettes a little uneven. If an area needs it more than others, I'll put it in certain areas. I don't like to go over white clouds and try and darken them. If there's a dark cloud there, it's fine, but sometimes these white areas need to remain white. So if I turn that on and off, it just helps focus your eye into the middle of the picture a bit, like so. And if we go back now to where we started and where we finished, it's quite a nice looking image, quite a striking change. So that is how we do that. Now, if let's say we want to do it another way without actually cutting the tree out like I have been doing for a while. Thanks to one of my students for helping me out. Thank you, Leah, for that. That's nice of you to offer me a suggestion of how I could do things better. And let's try that. So let's delete all those layers. Okay, just pressing delete on the keyboard. I can go in. I've already created the channel mask, which is there. So I'll keep that. I don't want to go making it hard for myself. I'm going to duplicate the photograph, Command J. I've got 2 copies there. I'm now going to go to add a layer mask. No, I'm not. I'm going to invert that. I'm going to actually load the selection that we've created earlier, the blue copy. I'm going to invert it and click OK. Now I'm going to add a layer mask. Nothing will change, but we have you'll see the mask come up, and it's been there's a mask that we've created. So the image, as it is now, whatever we do to it, the foreground will be revealed and the background will be hidden. Alright? So, for that reason, we can now slip a sky in between those two. So let's try that. Let's get the sky, drag the sky down, and there it is, goes behind. So it's not cut out as such, it's there, it's got a mask on it. Command T to transform and just bring that sky down. Okay. So the beauty of doing this is you have this mask, and you can actually refine that mask using the Refine Edge tools. Now there's things like you can change the density. So all of a sudden, if you have a hard edge, let's zoom in. See our edge there. If I go in even closer, if we look at our edge and it doesn't look right, we can just take the density down, and that basically allows us to lighten that sky and fix up that edge there. Now the other way is you can go into Edge Mask, and this is a Refine Edge tool, and you can actually do some crazy stuff in this. You can change the view to on black if you like, and that gives you a good idea of what's going on. You've got the Smart Radius tool. You can click on that, and then use the edge detection little thing here where you actually go run over, and you can see how that's already helped that edge by darkening it down. So you can zoom out a bit and you can rub over all those edges like so, and that can fix some of your problems. So this is the beauty of doing it this way as opposed to cutting it out. You have the option to go back and forward and fix up some of those edges this way. So you just run over this a little bit, and it can help your image out to a degree. So there's other things here. You can change, you shift the edges, you can smooth it off a little bit. You know, you might want to put a really tiny small amount of smoothing there, but you're looking at it as it's happening. You know, you could feather it a smidgen, and that can help solve edge issues. Once you're happy, you just click OK, and it can fix up some of the problems. Not always perfect, but it does help a little bit. So that's a great way of doing it as well. So you can see that we're actually not cutting it out. We've created a mask, but we can alter this mask after the fact, and that's pretty powerful stuff. Alright, well I hope this tutorial gives you some good ideas and allows you to get out there and cut out some skies and create some beautiful images. Thanks guys.